and welcome to Talk Time with Angie Presley. Today I'm here with the Program Director of Head Start, Kimberly Shim-Brown. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you, Angie. It's great to be here with you.
We're so glad you're here. And today we've been discussing exploring culture in the early Head Start classroom.
One of my favorite topics.
Yes, we brought you here today specifically to discuss the performance standard. And the one that we are really looking at is the one that states, the education approach must recognize children's individual rates of development as well as individual interests, temperaments, language, cultural backgrounds, and learning styles. The education approach must provide an environment of acceptance that supports and respects gender, culture, language, ethnicity, and family composition. Parents must be invited to become integrally involved in the development of the program's curriculum and approach to child development and education. And we know that for a long time there's been a controversy in the Head Start classroom on holidays. So talk to us a little bit about your experience regarding this performance standard and how it has impacted our program.
You bet. Angie, that performance standards is a mouthful. It's a lot of things to think about and take into consideration. And perhaps the easiest way for me to explain my experience with this particular standard is to give you a little bit of a history lesson.
Please,
Okay.
please.
So a long time ago, longer than I really like to admit, even though it seems like just yesterday, when I taught in the classrooms, we did celebrate holidays.
In the Head Start classroom.
It's true.
Okay, tell us more.
It was a long time ago. So shortly after cavemen emerged from the cave, and we, when my hair was really red, and we did Christmas, we celebrated some other kinds of things. In some centers, Santa Claus came and visited.
Oh, wow.
So that was part of the program's culture at that point in time. But it was also a really pivotal time in terms of education research and growth of knowledge about child development and respect for different ways of raising children and different ways of being as families. And so in the early 90s, when I was in the classroom, and those were the things that were happening, I was reading quite a bit just to know what was going on and to stay current. When I transitioned to central office, the program director at that time charged me with exploring this cultural diversity concept. And we'd already done, as a program, a little bit of work there. Kathy was working on it. She was integrating it into her CDA classes that she was teaching. And she did some really great charting of children's skin colors, because if you ask, what color are you? Then
And that comes up a lot.
it does. And people tend to want to say that they're white or they're black or,
Brown. Mm-hmm.
right. But really, if you chart your skin color against different foods, maybe mine is more peach, or maybe someone's is more like cinnamon, or it's like toast, depending on how your mom makes toast.
Yeah, definitely.
So we were beginning to talk about some cultural diversity concepts, but the real difficult piece was shifting from celebrating holidays to not celebrating holidays, and I had a very real experience with that. In my classroom, I had a young girl whose family, her name was Jamie.
Jamie,
Jamie.
Tell us more about Jamie. Now, I've heard this story before, and that's why I brought you in today. When you have shared this before, it really touched me and helped me understand the premise on why we aren't celebrating holidays in the classroom. Now, as a teacher, we never celebrated holidays in my classroom here at Head Start. And for a while when I first came, it was a negative connotation. We don't celebrate holidays. Why can't we celebrate holidays? And there was just many people's opinions, but we never really knew the program's opinion in the classroom. And that's why I think it's important for teachers to hear what you have to say. The knowledge I have now is that holidays can really cause a lot of stress in families, including my own. And it really, all that stimulation can be so overwhelming for children. I began to be really thankful I could come to the classroom and not have to worry about presents, Santa Claus, lights, all of that stuff, even though I enjoy it in my family. So tell us a little bit more about Jamie.
Okay. Well, Jamie was an adorable, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, china complexioned doll. She was absolutely adorable. Very quiet and fairly withdrawn. And as I got to know her family more, I learned some things about her family. She had several older brothers, and they were enough older that when they roughhoused with her, I was worried about her. I would worry about her coming in with bruises and bumps, and if I get a little bit verklempt, I always do. Okay. Her mom was working really hard to support the family, and they didn't have a lot of things. The things that she had were hand-me-down toys.
Mm-hmm.
She had hand-me-down clothes, and so materially they didn't have a lot of things. And as I was in the classroom and Christmas was approaching, and we were talking with Mom about accepting some gifts
Mm-hmm.
from the Salvation Army, because at that time the program helped connected families directly, and we actually delivered gifts to families.
Wow.
Or provided them at the center. So we were talking to her about the resources that it would provide for her family. And her mom said, "We don't celebrate Christmas, and no thank you." And I was really flabbergasted.
I bet.
Oh.
You were worried about Jamie.
I was worried about Jamie.
And you wanted the best for her as her teacher.
I really tried to help Mom see the benefit to the family of accepting these gifts. And unfortunately, because I was young and because I didn't know as much as I know now, and I hadn't had as many life experiences as I've had now, and because I hadn't had this experience with Jamie's mom, I kept pushing, saying, "Really, you need these things. These would be really good for Jamie. Jamie
Right.
needs these things. Jamie needs you to accept these things." And I kept nudging, pushing Mom to accept that. And she finally got pretty aggravated with me, and she said, "Stop. I'm not going to do that. It's not what our family does. We don't do Christmas. I'm not gonna sign up for Christmas gifts. I'm not gonna have these things in my home." And so it was a pretty awkward situation. Then in the classroom, because Christmas was something that we were talking about, and Jamie wants to be like all the other kids, and at this age, when you're 3 and 4, you love your teacher,
Mm-hmm.
you love your mom,
Mm-hmm.
but you love your teacher, and you want your mom to be proud of you, but you also want your teacher to be proud of you.
Right.
And so I didn't recognize it in the moment, but in hindsight, I really created a very conflicting environment for Jamie. She felt like, I don't propose to know what she felt. It seemed like she was really torn between pleasing her mom and doing what she knew her family's expectations and cultural values were, and pleasing me and the other teachers in the classroom.
Right.
She wanted to wrap things up in paper and put bows on them and give gifts, even though that wasn't part of their family culture.
And it can be kind of a peer thing as well, because if we're talking about it and doing it in the classroom, many children probably do celebrate Christmas in our area. So I bet that was a piece that she was torn between too. Her
I'm
peers.
sure it was.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to fit in. It's normal.
Mhm.
And at this age, when identity is still shaping, who am I? Where do I fit? What do I believe? What does my family believe? And how I'm connected to my family and my friends. those are all questions that 3 and 4-year-olds are still resolving.
Right.
And will continue to resolve over their lifetime. But unfortunately, I put Jamie in a position of choosing. Consistency with her home culture versus pleasing me, or her wanting to please me, and participating in things that were not consistent with her culture. So after a lot of research and thinking and talking with a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me, our program came to the realization that rather than celebrating any specific holiday or any specific tradition, that what we really needed to focus on was what is good for every child every day. Because Jamie's mom had said, I said, well, we're having a party on Friday or on Thursday, and this is what's going to happen. And she said, well, I'll keep Jamie home. And then that also tore my heart.
Yeah.
Because I knew that Jamie knew what was coming on Thursday, and then she was going to miss it, and then she would come back on Monday, and all the other kids would talk about it.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't be able to contribute to that conversation. And again, it was another example of me putting her in the middle of a very grown-up situation that she didn't have a place in. And it was inappropriate for me to put her in that position, and for her, for her mom to put her in that position. So while I feel really strongly that we need the classroom to be good for every kid every day.
Every day.
We don't need to put the Jamies of our world in the middle when they're 3 and 4 and have them sort out this complicated stuff. Instead, our classrooms need to be an oasis. And you kind of alluded to that earlier when you said that, at first you didn't really understand, but then you were relieved that you didn't have to put up a tree here and put up a tree at home, and do lights here and do lights home, and do this here and do that home.
Right.
That our classroom can be an oasis, not just for kids, but for staff too, from all the crazy that goes around during that time of the year. We find that while there are lots of good things associated with holidays, that holidays are best observed or celebrated within the context of the family and the friends of the family who celebrate similarly. Rather than me prescribing how it ought to, I'm going to present Christmas the way that I grew up with Christmas, which may or may not fit the 20 kids I have in my classroom, may or may not resonate with how they celebrate. So I think that the crux of the issue is, how do we make sure the classroom is good for every child, every day?
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, I remember as a child in public school, we would have these celebrations and holidays, and there were kids who had to leave the room, taken out of the room to go somewhere else, and that was kind of odd. So as a child, I could see that it was odd for them, and it was different, and it probably didn't feel that good to be secluded from the rest of the activities of the center. So yeah, that is a really great way to explain why we don't celebrate holidays. Now, what would you tell the teacher when they were if they were to have an interaction with a child who talked about Santa Claus came to my house? How would you respond to that child in the classroom now, if you were there today?
I think that it's really important for us to respond to what's real for children, what they're experiencing in their life. So if you say, Santa came to my house and left me lots of presents, I'm going to say, well, tell me about those, Angie. Tell me about what happened. And you'll start telling me, and I'll ask you some more open-ended questions, and we're going to have an exchange and talk about a lot of things. I'm not going to lead you to say, well, did you also go to church? Did you go to Mass? I'm not going to lead you to say that we can't talk about, I'm sorry, I can't talk about Santa Claus. We can talk about anything else, but I can't talk about Santa Claus.
Because that would have the opposite effect.
It would.
Where, oh no, I can't talk about my family in school.
Right.
So
we want to be responsive to children. And that's really the crux of the issue, is how do we not necessarily have a bunch of rules, but how do we look at a philosophy that says, I'm going to accept children, I'm going to accept families, I'm going to support them, I'm going to be encouraging to them, whatever they're bringing to me.
thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I know you're a very busy lady. You have lots of stuff to take care of for our program, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
the interview.